smart, be strong, be quick.
This is a pretty incredible experience.
There's always more to see.
Several thousand Negro demonstrators are participating in this largest civil rights demonstration ever in Memphis, Tennessee. Today, as the march moves up toward City Hall, Dr. Martin Luther King will speak to the striking workers and their sympathizers, now estimated somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000. Chaos has just broken out downtown. All right. Negro youth are smashing windows.
But Chief, what is the condition of the city?
The city is under attack.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place.
This is WMBS Headline News at 8:25. Dick Wheaton reporting, Washington. U.S. authorities have revealed a shortage of bombs in South Vietnam is curtailing air attacks on the Viet Cong.
The president has frequently interrupted his day-long conference on Vietnam problems to stay in close touch with the volatile racial disorders throughout the nation.
The bombs in Vietnam exploded home. They destroyed the dream and possibility for a decent America.
Let us close the springs of racial poison and make our nation whole.
The most massive series of demonstrations ever attempted is the promise of Dr. Martin Luther King, leader of a planned April civil disobedience drive in Washington.
I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
I will die standing up for the freedom of my people.
This has been Headline News from Radio Memphis, WMPS.
WMPS with the weather scope.
Here's the WMPS weather scope for Memphis and the Mid-South. Considerable cloudiness and mild with scattered showers through early Tuesday. Partly cloudy and continued mild Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday. The low tonight 55, the high Tuesday 75, and the low Tuesday night 50. The present barometric pressure 29.7.
This is Ray Sherman, United Press International in Memphis. 1,000 striking sanitation workers demanded Mayor Henry Loeb hear their grievances. The garbage collectors, predominantly Negro, want higher pay and union recognition.
We are insisting that justice must be done for the sanitation workers. All their just and fair demands must be met, and that at the same time, both private business and city government must provide a greater percentage of new and important jobs to Negroes.
This work stoppage directly affects the public health. Let no one make a mistake about it. The garbage is going to be picked up in Memphis.
I recognize Local 1733 as the bargaining representative for employees designating exclusive or otherwise.
Well, no,
he doesn't want to recognize a union.
The Memphis chapter of the NAACP says the civil rights group will begin protest actions Monday unless the city meets demands of striking garbage collectors. Police used riot control gas and nightsticks this afternoon to break up a disturbance among a group of striking garbage men. Part of the group of about 1,000 marchers began rocking a police car, and police waded in.
If I were the mayor of this city, I would be ashamed. Anybody who runs around picking on peaceful people is building for trouble.
We probably cannot expect protection of Negro people from brutality and from repression locally. The ear and the power outside of the city of Memphis.
Dr. Martin Luther King has urged the Memphis Negro community to engage in a general work stoppage and school boycott in support of the city's striking sanitation workers.
So I come to commend you, and I come also to say to you that in this struggle you have the absolute support, and that means financial support also of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. All over America, the vast majority of Negroes in our country are still perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. And it is criminal to have people working in a full-time job getting part-time income.
If the men do not return to work immediately, we will have no choice but to employ others to protect the public health.
This is Ray Sherman on the scene. Several thousand Negro demonstrators are participating in this largest civil rights demonstration ever in Memphis, Tennessee. This massive downtown march on Memphis is now underway. Several thousand Negroes are marching toward City Hall at this time. Many of the demonstrators are carrying the sign, "I am a man." They stretch out for several blocks. Later today, as the march moves up toward City Hall, Dr. Martin Luther King will speak to the striking workers and their sympathizers, now estimated somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000. Police are on hand with about 600 officers. Almost the entire force is standing by here in case any trouble might break out. Chaos has just broken out downtown. All right. Negro youths are smashing windows. I just saw... That sound you just heard was the sound of a tear gas fired by a police officer in an attempt to thwart this unruly demonstration. We repeat, several Negro youths started running down Main Street, smashing windows as they ran. Police are now moving down Beale Street. Another tear gas canister has just been fired by Memphis police. Negroes are running in every direction. Probably some more glass breakage in the downtown section of Memphis. The tear gas is boiling up from the street, and the Negro youths are fleeing from the area. Police are scrambling down Beale Street now. There's been a call of help from other officers. Officers are in trouble. The Negro youths are shouting at this time, "Go, go, go." Police have formed a cordon, and they're not permitting the march to move any further at this point. They're moving in with riot guns and tear gas canisters. Here comes the tear gas, and this reporter just got a sting of it. Main Street is littered with pickets. Nearly every store has had its windows shattered. There's no doubt one of the worst disturbances that have ever occurred in Memphis. is Ray Sherman on the scene again. There went another tear gas canister. Some youths are still hurling objects at officers. Police now have cordoned off the area around Claiborne Temple, where this massive demonstration that went wild and crazy began earlier today. Many of the Negro demonstrators have taken refuge inside the church from the tear gas that still fills the air, and inside the leaders are appealing to the Negro youths and militants to stop and desist from this disorder and violence that has occurred in Memphis.
You obviously had a group of boys who were ready to do that, and they did it. They didn't come to the march. They didn't consult us. They're outside of our control, absolutely, always have been. And this time they got their chance to break loose, and they took it.
What happened with Dr. King?
Well, we surrounded him with some ministers and moved him out of the area.
In an undisclosed location?
Yeah.
Do you think this event today will have any effect on the city government taking any different type of action than they have on the strike?
Oh, you can't allow this sort of terror and disruption to go on in a city like ours. You can be sure it'll have an effect.
When the march, which was to be permitted, had it remained orderly, degenerated into a riot, abandoned by its leaders, the police, with my full sanction, took the necessary action to protect the lives and property of the citizens of Memphis. There is hereby ordered and invoked a curfew which requires all citizens to be off the streets of the city of Memphis by 7 p.m. tonight and remain off the streets until 5 a.m. Persons on the streets during these hours who do not have legitimate business or emergency reasons will be subject to arrest. What needs to be done will be done.
There will be 4,000 troops in this city by 6 p.m. and the governor's message is that he is going to maintain law and order. We should not let fear get the best of us. And we're going to stop this thing and see that peace comes back to this community.
These troops are armed. Are they carrying ammunition?
Yes. Here they protect themselves, of course. If the situation demands it, they will return to fire.
General, do you have any idea of what the cost is of this operation to the taxpayers of Tennessee?
I'd be afraid to make a guess offhand. It's no small cost.
Governor Buford Ellington has ordered 4,000 National Guardsmen into the city. He has also ordered 200 riot-trained state patrolmen to Memphis and has placed an additional 8,000 guardsmen on standby alert at armories near Memphis.
The National Guard has been called in. We've had looting and burning, and several police officers have been hurt. We're trying to get it under control at this time, but at this time it's spreading.
Was it spontaneous or planned?
Well, it was very much spontaneous. I think we better go on record as saying anyway. That was first.
You mean it was not spontaneous, but on the record you want to say it's spontaneous?
Well, I think we'll just let these problems just iron themselves out, however people want to take it. Black people are tired.
Your group had nothing to do then with trying to take over Dr. King's march yesterday.
Well, I can't actually say concretely whether we're glad to see the city of Memphis wake up to reality.
I must honestly say that demonstration here yesterday was something that I had no part in planning. I was invited here by the leadership to take part, and we came cold. We didn't know all of the factors involved. I came here to make a speech 2 weeks ago where some 15,000 people assembled, and I assumed that some of the ideological struggles that we find in most cities over the nation, particularly in the North, were non-existent here.
Riots are here.
Riots are a part of the ugly atmosphere of our society now. And I would rather put my time and place my energy into getting rid of these conditions, because as long as they're here, they're going to produce angry people.
We're still having isolated incidents of vandalism and some fires, but certainly there's a tremendous decrease, and I think this is due in part to the guard being present and a heavier patrol.
I'm convinced that nonviolence is the way and that violence is not the answer.
Does that mean there will be no more violence in Memphis?
Well, I can't guarantee that there will be no more violence after we leave and go to Washington. I'm simply saying that we are going to have a nonviolent demonstration here.
Dr. King, what are your plans?
I will be leaving Memphis later today, going back to Atlanta, and my next step would be to come back to Memphis, and that, we hope, can take place in the next 2 or 3 days.
Dr. King.
We've got to give ourselves to this struggle until the end. Nothing would be more tragic than to stop at this point in Memphis. I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you. I left Atlanta this morning and then I got into Memphis. And some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers? Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
We have information that King has been shot at the Lorraine. Back then, he has been shot.
Okay, TAC 10 advising King has been shot, 604.
TAC 11, you want us to pull down?
Check TAC 11 to pull down.
Okay, TAC 11. In the area?
A signal Q.
King has been shot.
All TAC units on the call, you are to form a ring around the Lorraine Hotel. You're to form a ring around the Lorraine Hotel. No one is to enter or leave.
Back then, we have information that the shot came from a brick building directly east across, west from the Lorraine. Okay, Jack 10 has information. The shot was fired from a brick building directly across from the Lorraine on the east side, directly across from the Lorraine on the east side from a brick building, 606. All units, that's all units, 150 advising all back units to seal this area off completely. There's the weapon in front of 424, and the subject ran south on Main Street. South on Main Street, the subject responsible for the shooting is running south on Main Street. The subject went south from that location, 607. Not to touch the weapon is not to be touched, 607. Repeating information, the subject ran south on Main from 424. A young white male, well-dressed, ran south from 424 South Main, 608. Of information, the subject may be in a late model white Mustang, north on Main Street, 610.
Memphis police report they have just confirmed that Reverend Martin Luther King has been shot.
Dr. Martin Luther King, according to what one of his aides told this reporter, was standing on a balcony
in the motel room, getting ready to go to dinner. He was going to my house for dinner, as a matter of fact.
And so I said, Doc, you ready to go? He said, yes, just to say, let's get ready to go right now.
You did hear a shot? You know, we heard what sounded just like a firecracker, a loud, real loud shot.
I said, Dr. King. That was it. And the bullet exploded in his face.
And he had fallen backwards. I heard somebody holler, "Oh, Lord."
The bullet knocked him up off of his feet in that direction against that ledge over there.
Did Dr. King say anything?
He didn't say anything. He didn't say anything at all.
It's a hectic scene tonight. A bullet struck Dr. King in the back of the neck. He was rushed to St. Joseph Hospital in critical condition.
Dr. Martin Luther King was received in the emergency room at St. Joseph Hospital at approximately 6:15 p.m.
Well, I just was told that he had been shot. The report I got was in the shoulder. It was serious. That was the report I got from Reverend Andrew Young.
He is in the emergency room and he is in critical condition.
And there was, 20 or 30 doctors. And they tried external heart massage, and his respiration muscles were paralyzed and everything else was paralyzed. And he would have lost all his sensations. He still didn't have any blood.
You understand, it's really a massive wound.
I've never seen a wound like this. 7:05 p.m. of April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King was pronounced dead.
Attribute this to the violence that occurred last week, or do you think that this is a continuation of it? I just have no idea why anybody would want to shoot Dr. King.
God knows this is the most tragic thing that has ever happened in my life.
I cannot in any way try to describe to you the pain and the shock that I feel for this very dreary and moment in the life of this city and the life of this nation and in my own personal life.
The pathology and the sickness and the neurosis of Memphis and of this racist society in which we live is that really pulled the trigger. To some extent, Dr. King has been a buffer the last few years between the black community and the white community. The white people do not know it, but the white people's best friend is dead.
Some very sad news for all of you. Could you lower those signs, please? I have some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis. What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, and a feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country.
My name is Ben Hooks. I knew Dr. King personally and intimately. I loved him as I would have loved a brother. And so I call on all of our friends here in Memphis to stay in your homes tonight, and rather than break windows or shoot or hate, go on your knees and pray to God that we might live for the things for which Martin Luther King Jr. died.
In Memphis, the manhunt continues. Police are looking for a young, well-dressed man seen leaving a brick building across the street from the Lorraine Hotel.
160. Echo. We have one of these mobile units at Jackson and Hollywood. He states that he's talking to some fella following a Mustang east on Summer from Highland. Get your license number? No license number. Okay, the white male is east on Summer from Highland. Running a white Mustang responsible for this shooting. 36.
It's believed by the Memphis Police Department, Mr. Holloman, Chief McDonald, Director Armour, myself, that an emergency situation does exist, and at this time we're asking that all people of Memphis and Shelby County observe, and as we put into effect our curfew, we request that all persons, unless it's absolutely an emergency to be on the street, to go to their homes and stay there until tomorrow, when things hopefully will be in a better situation.
Well, Chief, what is the condition of the city?
The city is under attack.
Now the grocery store at 4th and Georgia, the East Georgia Street grocery has been looted. The liquor store at Linden and Hernando has been looted. The door has been knocked down and whiskey taken. Now we have a male colored been shot.
This is John True, United Press International, Memphis. Police and fire department companies are scrambling in answer to reports of sporadic outbreaks of looting, fires, and occasional sniper fire. 2 policemen have been shot. National Guard troops and highway patrolmen are being called in. A curfew is in effect in the city tonight, and only emergency traffic is being allowed.
The President has turned his full attention to domestic matters, particularly the violence spawned by the death of Dr. Martin Luther King.
The governor made the following statement. I most earnestly ask the people of Memphis and Shelby County to remain calm in face of this most regrettable and tragic incident. I can fully appreciate the feelings and emotion which this tragic occurrence have aroused, but for the benefit of everyone, all of our citizens must exercise restraint, caution, and good judgment at this time.
We heard at the airport that Dr. King had died. I had the difficult task of telling Mrs. King of his death, and with Mrs. Allen, I accompanied Mrs. King back to her home.
President Johnson has canceled his trip to Honolulu for a Vietnam Strategy Conference with Commanding General William Westmoreland and others. Here in Washington, the D.C. National Guard troops have been called for active duty for the weekend as fires and other outbreaks of disorder continue to plague the nation's capital. Demonstrations are in progress across the street right now from the White House.
Ready, sir?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, I want to thank you for your very fine statement that you made so promptly.
Thank you, Mayor. I called Ms. King.
I was with Ms. King when you called her. Martin, a close person and friend. I had great respect and admiration.
I hope you'll let me know any suggestions you have. We have a little problem in Durham, and we have one here in Washington. They're moving around. We don't know the extent of it, don't know how serious it's going to be, but they have 2,000 or 3,000 people gathered. You have any suggestions as to anything else that I ought to do?
Mr. President, I think you've taken exactly the right steps, son, and I'm delighted that you're running the show, son.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I look forward to seeing you.
Widespread violence and looting broke out in 2 areas of New York City tonight. Extra police were being rushed into the 2 largest ghettos in the city, Harlem and Brooklyn's Bedford-Stuyvesant section.
3,000 National Guardsmen are on the street in Chicago tonight. At least 3 persons are dead and possibly a 4th.
Students enraged by the sniper slaying of Martin Luther King went on a shooting and burning rampage here in Tallahassee early this
Demonstrators in the Times Square section stood on street corners chanting, "Who died for freedom? Dr. Martin Luther King."
The racial violence has struck the Windy City. Fires are blazing out of control on the west side, and over it all, the stench of fear.
Pope Paul is profoundly saddened by the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. The Pope went to his private chapel to pray for the Negro leader as soon as he learned of his death.
Well, the only thing I can say is I wish we would quit shooting our best people.
We killed a president, and now we killed a saint.
It does not bode well for 1968.
Every well-thinking American citizen ought to be concerned about who killed Martin Luther King. But I am not as concerned about who killed Martin Luther King as I am concerned about what killed Martin Luther King.
Nationwide slum rioting has claimed more than 30 lives, and damage is running into countless millions.
Memphis Mayor Henry Loeb has declared Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to be days of community mourning in Memphis. Flags will be flown at half-mast during this time.
Police are still seeking the young white man who assassinated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thursday night at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis.
Mr. Holloman, are you holding a suspect right now, sir?
No, sir.
Do you have a material witness, sir?
No, sir.
Do you feel like your police department gave proper protection to Dr. King?
There was 25 to 30 officers in the immediate area. The protection was so close that one of the officers actually saw Dr. King when he was struck by the bullet. It would have been impossible to have prevented a sniper assassin to have accomplished his purpose.
How could he get away with so many men in the area?
That's the question that we're trying to establish at this time. The Attorney General offered his complete assistance of the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the investigation of this crime.
President Johnson, with his Honolulu high-level conference held in abeyance by the killing of Dr. Martin Luther King, will meet with unspecified civil rights leaders today at the White House. Meanwhile, Attorney General Ramsey Clark and 3 other federal officials have flown to Memphis.
We have no evidence that there was a widespread plot. The evidence at this time indicates that it was the act of a single individual. There are a number of items of physical evidence, more than you ordinarily have in a crime in a situation of this type at this time in an investigation. The gun itself and the projectile are in Washington, and they're under laboratory scrutiny at this time. That's all I can say on that subject.
Can you tell us how far your investigation is spreading? How far away from Tennessee?
It will spread as far as the evidence takes us, and it has spread some several hundred miles from the borders of Tennessee at this time.
Police in Memphis remain mum on their investigation of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. Here is what police know but say little about. They're seeking a 30-year-old white man who spoke with a southern drawl and called himself John Willard. There are indications authorities already know his real name. In a related development, a 20-year-old Memphis Negro youth died early today and became the city's first victim of the Thursday night rioting in Memphis, touched off by the assassination of Dr. King.
Scott Peters, United Press International, the White House. President Johnson was briefed this morning at 4 a.m. and again at 6:30 on the situation surrounding the rioting and looting since Thursday night. Washington looks like a city at war, and it is. There are something like 4,000 troops in the city, and tanks rumble through the streets.
A machine gun post was set up on Capitol Hill.
Black smoke can be seen billowing into the air in many parts of northwest Washington, some of the trouble just 3 blocks from the White House.
President Johnson has issued a proclamation declaring this Sunday as a national day of mourning throughout America.
We implore our mayor and city council to address themselves with swift dispatch to the mutually acceptable solution. We are persuaded that only when a spirit of flexibility and goodwill dominates can true peace and progress come to our city.
So, Honorable Mayor, I feel deeply that the apostle, the greatest apostle of peace in this decade, this age, has died. I feel that if any constructive and stabilizing forces are to come on the scene, it will have to come from my white brethren, you. And it is in this spirit that you can speak most effectively and constructively.
You're a human being too. And somehow we've got to communicate to you as a man.
Mr. Mayor, this is the 3rd time I've come to you pleading. If we had been able to get a hearing as ministers of the black community, we never would have needed to send for King or anybody else.
When Mrs. King arrived, we met with her briefly on the airplane. We expressed for the President, for our government, for ourselves and the nation, our profound sorrow.
They're now slowly rolling the gold casket containing the body of Dr. Martin Luther King into the chartered airplane sent to Memphis by Senator Robert Kennedy. Police here have had a difficult time controlling the crowds that are gathered around the plane. The funeral will be Tuesday. Dr. King's planned march in Memphis Monday will be carried out. The Reverend Ralph Abernathy, who is destined to become the new leader of Dr. King's Southern Leadership Conference, has announced we will return Monday.
The body of Dr. Martin Luther King has been returned to his home city of Atlanta.
It's a gray, overcast day here in Memphis as thousands of the city's Negroes gather to march in the interrupted sanitation men's demonstration.
The march is running a bit later than planned due to the late arrival of Mrs. King, who was held up in Atlanta's airport because of fog.
Seems like at 10 minutes of 11 that the march is just about ready to get underway. It's an extremely large crowd.
Leading the procession, the widow of the late Dr. Martin Luther King and her 3 children, the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, Dr. King's successor, Harry Belafonte, United Auto Workers President Walter Reuther, and other union leaders. The number of marches, previously estimated between 8 to 15,000 by various sources, may be closer to 30 or 40,000.
Local police have devised the tightest security measures ever imposed on the city. Off they step now, black and white, out here today because their leader had a dream they intend to make real.
They walk in total silence, an almost unbelievable, eerie quiet.
And I've come to reaffirm that I am as more committed today to the causes of human dignity as a black man who draws strength from a departed black brother.
The whitest American cannot be free until he gives his hand to the blackest American to make him free.
We loved him dearly. I have always been at his side when I felt that he needed me. And so today I felt that he would have wanted me to be here.
John Chambers, United Press International on Capitol Hill. While Martin Luther King's funeral procession filed through the streets of Atlanta, the House Rules Committee sent the 1968 Civil Rights Bill to the floor for action. That could come tomorrow.
Scott Peters, United Press International, the White House. President Johnson has signed the Civil Rights Bill of 1968.
Now with this bill, the voice of justice speaks again.
In an East Room ceremony, the president made the bill, with its controversial fair housing section, the law of the land.
The city of Memphis recognizes the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees as the designated representatives in the Division of Public Works.
Go ahead, Brother Jones, take the vote.
All in favor of the recommendation, let it be known by saying aye.
And we're not going to let, I'm telling you now on the behalf of these preachers, we're not going to forget the fact that we're bound by the blood of Martin Luther King, as well as by the sweat and toil that we've all given.
The Justice Department has announced that James Earl Ray, the accused assassin of Dr. Martin Luther King, has been arrested in London, England. It was said that Ray's arrest was the result of investigation by the FBI pursued in all 50 states, as well as in Canada, Mexico, Portugal, England, and other countries. It was said that Ray was detained in England based on his use of fraudulent documentation, a passport, and also on the fact that he was carrying a concealed weapon.
The citizens of Memphis are elated over the apprehension of James Earl Ray.
And now it's our duty. It'll be a privilege to carry it out. I think it needs to be said clearly that so far as the black community is concerned in Memphis, many of us question the idea that only one man was involved. Knowing, as an example, how efficiently our police can block off would-be bank robbers from getting out of the city, we'd like to know how one man committing a crime with the police on the scene within 2 minutes could nonetheless get out of the city by himself.
Do you feel that James Earl Ray could have planned this thing and executed it and done it completely by himself?
I think so. My position is that we have no evidence of a conspiracy. There were several indications in his background that he was anti-Negro and anti-Semitic.
To some, this is a day of sorrow. To some, this is an occasion for fear. To me, this is a day of hope. And if the lives and deaths of Dr. King and Medgar Evers and those 4 little girls in the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham had any meaning, it was that we should use our power not to create conditions of oppression that lead to violence, but conditions of hope that lead to peace. And let us pray as Dr. King prayed in the universal psalm of brotherhood that meant so much to him and to you and to all of us, and that should be the prayer of this holy day. If we can help somebody as we pass along, if we can cheer somebody in this life, if we can show somebody that he's traveling wrong, then our lives shall not be in vain.